All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about the 147-pound division. Keith Thurman has a fight this weekend, which may lead him to a fight with Errol Spence Jr., but also word is coming out of Dallas that Errol Spence Jr. has other plans, and they include Terence Crawford. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. Before I get into the subject matter of the video, first, let me thank you for coming to watch the video. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you can get all notifications. Also, make sure you support over at busr.ag/Fanon. If you're going to wager on the Super Bowl, for every dollar, as long as you wager on the Super Bowl, every Super Bowl touchdown that is scored, when the Super Bowl is over, you will get $10 deposited into your account to wager on other events. So make sure you if you are somebody that wagers on sports, make sure you take advantage of that over there at busr.ag/Fanon. So let's get into this, man. Keith Thurman is going to be fighting this weekend, and a lot of people believe that after Keith Thurman, if Keith Thurman is able to beat Mario Barrios, which I do believe he will be, that he is going to be in a position to get a fight with the winner of Errol Spence Jr., Yordenis Ugas. That is the most logical progression for the welterweight division this year, because the PBC has in-house, because that's all of those guys are in-house in the PBC, and that would be what makes the most financial sense for the PBC. A lot of people, including myself, were starting to really doubt that the fight between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. could be made because Terence Crawford is not doing business with the PBC, not doing business with Floyd Mayweather, Al Heyman, and really don't know where he's going to wind up. But on a whim, I called somebody because I had listened to an interview that Marvelous Jarvis gave to the Boxing Voice, talking about Errol Spence Jr. and the sparring for Errol Spence Jr., what he was looking like in camp and all of that good stuff, right? You've seen those videos done, all through YouTube, and different boxing articles have been written about it. Basically, with him saying, man, that Errol Spence Jr. looks terrific. He's looked the best that he's ever looked. And this is from a guy that is sparring him on a regular basis. And then, in the interview with Ness, Marvelous Jarvis, please, I hope that I'm pronouncing his name wrong. No disrespect at all if I'm not. Chalk it up to being old. He said, was asked, what does he think that Errol, should be doing? Is he going to do the Keith Thurman fight? Would he do this? Would he do that? And his sparring partner said, no, he should do the Terence Crawford fight. That Terence Crawford is the one that everybody wants to see. Terence Crawford is a fight that Errol Spence Jr. wants, and the one that is really going to add to his legacy. So, I have some connections that are fairly close to that camp, and I called them and asked, and they were like very adamant and said, yeah, Errol Spence Jr. himself has not discounted this Terence Crawford fight taking place, and that he is still wants to get that fight because he knows that fight means a lot for his legacy, and that Errol Spence Jr. is still committed to fighting Terence Crawford, that he doesn't want, he doesn't, this is things that Errol has said in public, right? But he doesn't want the Keith Thurman fight. He wants the Terence Crawford fight, and then he's hoping that he can get the Terence Crawford fight right after he gets done with Yordenis Ugas. So whenever any type of the conversations are going to come up about what he does next, that is the angle that he's going for, and nothing has really changed in that regard. But for Errol Spence Jr. And I really am very, very impressed with that he would understand, that Errol would understand that he really does need, from a legacy standpoint, Errol Spence Jr. needs Terence Crawford. If he were to, and I've done a lot of videos about this. People are always like, you're such a big Errol Spence Jr. fan and you're always hating on Terence. One thing that I've been consistent about with Errol Spence Jr. is that for Errol Spence Jr.'s legacy, and for just to say that he is the best, fighter, at the welterweight division, that there is no bigger fight no more important fight for him in his career than Terence Crawford. Though these guys, if they do not fight, years and years later, people are going to talk about this fight as the one that got away, right? And Errol, I would hope, would not want to be sitting up, when he's 50 years old, 55 years old, still have a feeling within himself, man, I could have whooped that dude. And if I would have whooped that dude and made that fight happen, nobody would be talking about me and what I did in my career and how I beat all these people, but I didn't beat him, right? Or God forbid that he doesn't fight Terence Crawford and then, he moves up to 154 or 160 and, 6 or 7 fights from now, lose to somebody, and people are like, oh, he never would have beaten Terence Crawford. You see, all those type of stuff can still hang over his head. And my understanding is, dude, that this dude is an absolute warrior and that he is thoroughly convinced that he can beat Terence Crawford. There is absolutely, and this is something that I've known from the several interviews that I've done, like official interviews that I've done with that camp. Errol Spence Jr., Derrick James, and those guys feel that Errol Spence Jr. will beat Terence Crawford. They have specific reasons why they think that they will beat Terence Crawford. And at the same time, they're not surprised that Terence Crawford is beating the other people that they're beating. But they're like, no, we know what's going to happen with Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is going to be, first of all, is going to be very amazed at the speed of Errol Spence Jr., how fast he is. And that's something that people do not really get a grip of until they actually get in the ring with him and see how fast that dude's hand speed is. Derrick James for his part talks about how Errol Spence Jr. is a lot more technically sound and defensively responsible than people give him credit for, because his defense is much more subtle. It's not about, like somebody throwing a bunch of, shots at him and him bobbing and weaving, sticking his hands behind his back, sticking his tongue out, doing like the Tyson Fury show of it. He's more of the school of of the Archie Moore type of fighter where, they teach you about their defense. They're like, look, parry shots. Block, parry, elbows, catching shots on your gloves, catching them on your hands, catching them on your elbows, and not really ever getting caught with a lot of stuff that's really, really clean, but yet still being in position to land shots. So those guys are very confident about being able to beat Terence Crawford, and they also understand that really is the fight that people say that, that they need to get in order to really prove themselves, which is a little different than the take that Terence Crawford takes on the fight, which is that, Terence Crawford says, I don't really need Errol Spence Jr. for my legacy. What I've done at 135, when I've done it at 140, that's enough right there to get me into the Hall of Fame. So they take a little bit different of a different approach, at it. But it was really a relief to me when I hear Marvelous Jarvis, who was in that camp, still saying, look, no, man, it's not Keith Thurman. That's not the fight that the fans really want to see. The fans really want to see Errol Spence Jr., Terence Crawford. And then for me to hear from other people that know, yeah, Errol Spence Jr. wants to do that. He wants to do that before he moves to 154 pounds. He understands that eventually he will move to 154 pounds, but if he can actually get that done, he's going to push and try to get the PBC in a situation where they'll give him the fight that he wants. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the fight is going to happen, because again, the PBC is going to have say-so over that. Al Heyman is going to have an input on that. The money is going to play a role in what they do with that. Whether or not Terence Crawford takes the money, what he's going to ask for has a lot to do with that. So, Errol Spence Jr. is not alone, but it's still, if he's a major advocate and really pushing for the fight, it definitely increases the likelihood that fight will take place. But anyway, that's my take on the situation. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.